the EH Leaders Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to connect, encourage, equip strong leaders to make an impact in the homes around them. Today's episode is a 10-minute conversation with one of my favorite leaders. John, what's up, man?
Not much, man. Glad to be on here. Thanks for me to jump on, and excited to talk to you today.
I'm super excited to have you. This may or may not be the second attempt at this, but we're gonna make a go at it. I'm gonna start the clock, put 10 minutes on the clock, and then I'm just gonna pepper you with questions. That sound good?
I'm ready.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Clock is started. John, where are you serving, and what do you do?
Yeah, so my name is John Keim. I am at Granger Community Church, which is in Granger, Indiana, northern Indiana, just outside of the South Bend area. And my role here is pastor of kids and students. And so I get to oversee our kids teams, our students teams, young adult stuff. I lead our whole internship program, and I get to serve on our leadership team for the church, which involves a whole lot of stuff, but I also get to do some of the preaching on the weekend from time to time. So got my hands on a whole lot of stuff, and I've actually been here for almost 17 years now too.
Wow, 17 years. You got some longevity there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Before we get into ministry, tell me about your family.
Yeah, family. So my wife, Angela, and I have been married almost 17 years. We actually got married, and I started at the church 2 weeks later. And so we've been married for 17 years almost. We actually met together here in youth group growing up. And then we have 3 daughters. Lydia's 11, about ready to go into middle school this next year. Nora's 9, and then Audrey is 5.5.
And that's awesome. So you got family, but you're also super busy, just like most leaders out there. A few quick questions. Are you introvert or extrovert?
I'm an introvert. Myers-Briggs, I'm an ISTJ. I like being around people, but I need to get away from them to recharge.
Yep, very good. All right. Now, tough one. Enneagram number?
Number 1.
Number 1. All right. Enough about Enneagram. What is your favorite part of your role at church? Like, what's the thing that just you love to do?
Yeah. So I love time with students. I mean, my so much of my time in ministry has been with students. So anytime I get to hang with students, I got a 6th grade small group this year. I'm leading the high school mission trip this year, so I love hanging with students. But specifically, my role right now, I love the integration we're starting to see across different leaders and departments. And so one of those big things is some steps we're taking for families that we're integrating a lot of our kids leaders, student leaders, men's, women's. We're thinking about the family and some of this. So it's pretty fun seeing some of that, and also having the longevity here. I mean, I've got people on my staff that I took through youth group, and then I get to hire them after college. And so seeing some of that and some families' longevity is really pretty fun.
Man, that's awesome. So on the flip side of that, what is one thing that is like your least favorite thing to do, but you do it to the best of your ability? Maybe a growth area.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's a growth area or a decline area, because I used to be like great at this stuff, but sometimes the just paperwork, data, follow up, crossing some of the, T's, dotting the I's, just systems, some of that stuff like that. I know it's necessary, it's valuable. It's actually what I kind of came out of college really great at, and helped out a lot. But like, I don't know, I love some of the people aspect of it. I love dreaming and kind of setting some things up, but sometimes some of those details, you got to grind it out. But I've got some great teammates around me who help with some of that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Most people that administratively, that's not your favorite thing to do. You hire people that can kind of help you in that. So what's the biggest receipt you ever lost?
I don't think I've ever really lost a receipt. Maybe a meal out type thing, $30 with a lead or something like that. So I've never lost any big time ones. So
there you go.
Pretty detailed on all those, at least still.
That's awesome. Yeah, we mission trip in Oklahoma, or in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We bought all this food, spent probably like $2,500 at Sam's and all this stuff, and I didn't have a receipt coming home. That was not a fun one. That was a tough one to try to explain my way out of.
Yeah.
All right, man. So the purpose of Empowered Homes is we want to connect church and home. So what are you doing intentionally? You mentioned a little bit. What are you doing intentionally to connect church and home?
Yeah, so what started this was in the fall. We kind of launched an interdepartmental team on refreshing what our family strategy is. How are we thinking about families around here? And I was asked to lead the charge on that as part of the lead team. And so we brought in a kids leader, student leader, the person who's kind of running point on our women's ministry and spiritual growth, and one of the guys who helps with a lot of men's ministry. And we just came together and we thought, okay, how do we get upstream to think family first? We may still have a great kids program or a great women's event, but what is that doing for the family? Because I think oftentimes I made the assumption that whatever happens in one of those events, one of those ways, it'll make its way to the family. You know, a middle schooler comes home from camp completely changed. Well, they go back to the same family, and it, yes, God can take a student lit up and change a whole family, but how can we think first about the family and how this is going to integrate? And so we've been thinking about that. How do we engage the family? So an example in this, we just came back from a high school winter retreat, and rather than just having a great retreat and right before thinking like, oh, we should tell families what we're doing, or how do we help families get the details? Well before, we had the content going out to parents, so they knew what we're talking about, where we're going, when the sessions were even, so they'd be praying. The women's ministry leader actually rallied 40 different families to pray over the 40 hours of the retreat all weekend long. And so these are families that don't even necessarily have kids on the retreat. So our church was behind it, families were behind it. And then there's a family devotional that we had for post-retreat, so that any of the students that were on the retreat, their families have this devotional that they can talk about this over the next week. And it's going to bring up what we talked about on the retreat. So it's a way for this topic, for this thing to kind of be introduced into the family. And so this is something that we're kind of looking at all the different events that hit each aspect of the family. So kids, students, men's, women, and this team together, seeing how do we together engage the family. So a lot of it is just intentionality and getting further upstream in the planning on these great events and experiences of how do we help the family experience this and grow together.
I love that, man. And just hearing you talk about even just that one event with Winter Retreat, that added more layers to the event and more work on your part, right?
Yes and no in some ways, because we've come together as a team on this. Yeah. The gal who leads the whole women's ministry, she loves prayer. It was just a green light and she took off. She ran all that. I didn't think about that. Our student director didn't think about that, but she made that happen. And we just shared some of the stories. And one of the families, elementary age kids, they prayed and they included their kids in the prayer on Saturday night over the session. And they came to the 11:30 service on Sunday morning, which is when the high schoolers got back on the buses pulling in for service together with the church family. And these little kids saw them and said, Mommy, do you think God heard our prayers? There's the high schoolers we were praying for. And now they're excited about when they grow up and get to go on retreats. So including the families in that is just, and it feels like we're just starting to scratch the surface with this stuff. So we're real excited where it's going to go.
No, that, and I hear oftentimes the grumbling of like, man, I'd love to do more for our families. I'd love to do this, but it just adds more to my plate. I'm already busy, already swamped. But I think what you said of being intentional to do it, you do have to just get ahead. I don't think it adds much more to your plate. It just means you can't be last minute. And so I think that's the intentionality that I love, that you're thinking further ahead, even more so than you already were, to tie things back into the home. I mean, that's a great point. We are at 2.5 minutes, so it's gone by quick, man. This is a fun question. What's the greatest advice you were given as a young ministry leader? You've been there for 17 years. What's the greatest advice you were given as a young leader that you kind of still use today?
Yeah, I think one of this came from our founding pastor, who just passed away this last year. He had taught many of us early on, there's areas of my life that God has called me to that nobody else can fulfill. Other people can do some things with these retreats. Other people can pull some stuff together. Other people can meet with a student that's going through something, but nobody else can be Angela's husband. That's a role God's called me to. Nobody else is Lydia and Nora and Audrey's dad. And so my love and my ministry, meeting the needs of others with the love of Jesus, my love and ministry to my family is my first ministry. And so I can't go around being super youth pastor or family pastor or any of that type of stuff if I'm not first living that out in my own home. And so the vision for that, and also the permission to do that as a pastor and as a young leader, has marked me, and still working on it, still growing on, and going through all the phases as my kids get older, go to middle school. Like, it's all new. It's all the journey in that. But that's my first ministry, is to my family. And so recognize that and trying to continually do that. And then also give the other leaders that I'm leading now, the young leaders I'm influencing, permission and the vision to do the same thing, is transformational for families, I think.
Man, that is huge. And honestly, that doesn't come easy. That's a cultural thing within your staff that's been established. And for you to get blessed with that from your senior pastor early on, I just think of all the people that have worked for you over the years and that will work for you in the future will be blessed to know that family does come first. As we're leading other leaders, I think even volunteers, we've got to keep that in mind too.
That's absolutely a principle. I mean, people sometimes they they run from problems in their life and they think, well, I'm doing ministry, I'm volunteering at the church, what could be wrong with this? And they sometimes will ignore the hard conversations in the home, a step to take with their child, or a tough conversation with their spouse. And sometimes they run from that in ministry. And so helping even our volunteers, you're absolutely right, helping them take those steps in their homes first.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. We got 15 seconds. What's something you're looking forward to this year? Like, what's just real quick?
And I'm really excited to see where this family team continues to go. Outside of the project we did for 6 months, we're continuing to meet every month just to stay in each other's headspace. So I'm excited to see what God's going to do with that as we learn and grow together. And also, we're launching high school camp for the first time ever. We've never in 35 years as the church had that. So time's up, but high school camp's coming.
That's awesome, man. So just, looking forward to continue. And what I heard you say too, and I think it's so wise, and those of you maybe listening going, how do we do this? You got to get everybody in the room. Get your team members all together, get in the room. Hey, we want to connect church and home. We got to do it together. If you're the only one, if the student pastor is the only one doing it, it's only going to go that far. But if all of us got in the same room, that's breaking down those silos of being more strategic. And the cool part is, which I always challenge leaders, is like, you may get frustrated, it may be hard, but your families recognize it. They'll see it and they'll notice it right away, and it'll benefit them. It's a big deal. So John, 10 minutes, man. That went quick.
Went quick, man.
I appreciate you, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.